Hey guys, it's me, Anselmo, Screenburn TV, new fresh tattoo, here to talk about Final Fantasy XV. I don't even know where to start, honestly. There's not a lot to say about the production of this game that hasn't been said before by someone else. It's had one of the longer development cycles in modern times. I mean, not as long as Duke Nukem Forever or Last Guardian or something. Especially Duke Nukem Forever. That was everyone's biggest fear. Everyone was like, please don't let this be a Duke Nukem Forever thing. Okay? Please let this be at least a good game. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Is 15 the game that everyone wants and the game that the series needed? So everyone knows it started as one of the Final Fantasy XIII kind of spin-off games, in which at one point I imagine Square-Enix was bleeding money after the 13 travesty, whatever you want to call that series of weirdness. I'm sure they're bleeding money, and they wanted to just cut that 13 saga off and just put all their resources into making a main Final Fantasy, which they definitely did. And you can definitely tell, I mean, if you watch some of the older Final Fantasy versus 13 footage, they didn't really change too much. I mean, they changed some of the character design and just some of the aesthetic a little bit, but it looks like it's pretty much the same kind of game that they were working on, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So that's cool. So the game itself. Let's start with what you see first. Let's start with the graphics. The graphics in the game, generally fantastic. It's a great looking game. Not that it doesn't have issues, mind you. It's got really great animation work. Which is nice, there's no real. Sometimes some of the animations go on for a little too long, which I'll talk about later. But for the most part, animation is great. The lighting is really good. The lighting's really good, which helps because some of the texture work for the NPCs, it's just terrible. Like some of the NPCs look like. They look like PS2, honestly. Like, I've seen PS2 NPCs that look better than some of the NPCs in Final Fantasy XV. Now, that doesn't mean that it's an ugly game. It's just... my friend Robin said it best. He said it's inconsistent in its texture quality. I mean, sometimes you'll get a really good high-res texture on a wall or something, and then you'll talk to an NPC next to the wall, and he looks like he's from 2003. It's weird, but it's not. It wasn't enough to It's worth mentioning for sure, but it wasn't enough to turn me off from the game. There were some graphical glitches here and there, some texture smearing, and at one point a character just straight up disappeared in the middle of a fight. They were still fighting, but the character was gone. And like most open world games, there is some pop-in. Again, not really too distracting, but once you do get the airship, that's not really a spoiler. It's a Final Fantasy game. You get an airship, and you're up in the air. I mean, it really shows off the stitches that hold the game world together, and while it's majestic, it's yeah, it's weird. The whole game is weird because it's majestic, and then don't look too close because it's being held together by fucking duct tape and sticks. But other than that, the graphics great. The art design is really great. But without this good of art design, I think the graphics would have been less, or the flaws in the graphics would have been less acceptable if the art design wasn't so great. The world, EOS, man, ended up feeling really familiar and like a character in itself. As in, like, there was tons of really memorable landmarks, which landmarks are super important in an open world game. That's one thing that's always missing from a lot of modern open world games. There's not a lot of memorable landmarks, so there's not a lot of, I don't know. It's just easier to remember, or it's easier to kind of get a feeling of the whole world when you can see a picture of someone's screenshot and you can be like, I know where that is. I've been there. It attaches you to the world better than most games. Metal Gear 5. But yeah, generally the aesthetic is very reminiscent to me of Final Fantasy VIII, wherein the setting it's wholly realistic, with mostly modern-looking cars and planes and trains and all that shit. But, it shares its reality with, genuinely fantastical elements like magic and monsters and summoning godlike creatures. It's pretty awesome. I've always enjoyed this kind of a juxtaposed setting, like an 8. I really enjoyed that aspect of 8. And here in EOS, I really couldn't stop thinking about Final Fantasy VIII. I don't want to go into too much of why it reminded me of 8, because it might end up spoiling some of it. But it's travel by car and train, draw magic from the world, watch out for monsters kind of world. Reminded me a lot of 8. And also, while the character design was done by Tetsuya Nomura, which, honestly, I don't like Tetsuya Nomura's art design. I think it's just terrible. He did a good job. He did a good job with 15. You can tell that Tabate, the guy who took over Nomura as director for 15, you could tell that he kind of equalized some of those Nomura designs, because most of his designs are kind of outlandish, and he's the guy who designed Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy X, that ridiculous, these zippers everywhere. It just looks, it's stupid. All right, I think it's stupid. I mean, if anyone out there likes his style, more power to you. I think it's just terrible to my eyes. But the characters in this game, they were not, they weren't overly ridiculous. They were pretty subdued and normal compared to most of, say Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy X. One of the other major aesthetic themes of the game, other than like the modern / fantasy kind of juxtaposition, is kind of the concept of scale and its effect on you, the player, and the character. As in, like, the open world itself, the huge summons that you can summon, which, those things are like 100 feet tall, real-time scale. It's amazing. And also just the larger than the character's tale of destiny kind of thing. There's a lot of, it's good. It all comes together to really bring the world to life. It's unlike any modern Final Fantasy game. All around the game, it really is a sight to behold. And even the sometimes mediocre texture work really didn't bother me too much, honestly. And also, I was playing on a PS4 Pro, and I never ran into any really remarkable frame drops. I know some people have, so watch out there. There are some frame drops. I didn't get any. And I didn't get any crashes or anything. So, overall, great looking game. Sorry, I got some notes over here. The design, or the sound design. Let's go to sound now. The sound design is awesome. Except at one point during the game, the game music was so overpowering that I could not hear a goddamn word the characters were saying. Luckily, I had the subtitles on, so I could read it. But it was weird. It was like out of nowhere, the music just swelled really loud, like really, really loud. That was kind of annoying. But other than that, the sound mix is really good. No real problems there. The sound effects are awesome. All the environmental and combat sounds are perfectly informational. They always let you know what's happening, when it's happening, where it's happening. Especially if you play with headphones on, it's awesome. And all the sound effects sound how they should. Firaga sounds like Firaga. The Magitech armor sounds like what Magitech armor would sound like. It's just good, solid sound. The music, the original soundtrack, is so good. I forgot the composer's name. Forgive me, I forgot her name, but she did the Kingdom Hearts series, Street Fighter II, strangely enough, and then I think Final Fantasy XIII. I think, don't quote me on that one, but I liked the soundtrack for 13. But yeah, it's generally a really good, solid soundtrack. I really can't wait for it to come out. It comes out in 6 more days. Ding! Can't wait to listen to it all in its full form. But yeah, it has a really good synthesis of the older Final Fantasy musical stylings and kind of the post-10 electronic kind of vibe. It's good. It's really good. When you're fighting, the music will just swell at the perfect moments, and you're just like, oh yeah. Yeah, the music's always appropriate unless there is an audio glitch, which happened 1 or 2 times. Where the music would just suddenly stop and then the next track would start. That happened a few times. It wasn't enough. Again, it wasn't enough to deter me, but it is worth mentioning that it can happen. But yeah, altogether, solid soundtrack. Oh yeah, another thing about the soundtrack as a whole, at points during the game, you can actually purchase soundtracks from almost all of the previous Final Fantasy games. I mean, like, almost all of them, except for Mystic Quest. What's up, Square-Enix? No love. That was the best part. That's the best part of Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, is the goddamn soundtrack, and you include fucking Type 0, but you don't include Mystic Quest. I don't know. Other than that, great music. The voice work, on the other hand, kind of a mixed bag, honestly. The main characters are all pretty good. The 4, 5, 6, 7, 7-ish kind of main characters. They're all, I think they're all well voice acted, especially the villain. Woo, that villain. He is MVP voice actor, probably MVP character, really, of the game. And whoo, man, great voice acting. But yeah, all the main cast is good. They all sound effectively like their trope, because they're all going for a certain trope, Like you have the main character who's more brooding, and you have the brutish. You have the brutish, and then you have the brutish one. Then you have the intelligent one. Then you have the comic relief one. And then you have the female oracle, kind of mystical, and you have the. It covers all the tropes, but it's never too derivative. It's never hacky. It's good. It's really good. I really liked Luna Freya. I ended up really liking Luna Freya's voice actors as well. Now the NPC voice work is only passable sometimes. Most of the time, it's extremely lackluster and just phoned in as fuck. By hour 50, I was just skipping through subtitles and skipping through dialogue for like NPC quests, like side quests, because I just read it and just skipped it. I'm like, I don't want to hear your stupid fucking voice, okay? I mean, yeah, it was annoying. So some of that voice work was just not good. And as a modern open world game with a team of main characters, the four main characters. There will be like the modern kind of in-game banter kind of dialogue, like the passive banter, and for the most part, it doesn't get too repetitive and it's not too annoying. But 100 hours in, which I'm like 110 hours in, okay, it can get really annoying, and I wish there was a way to turn it off. You will hear repeats of, "It's hot. Then take off your jacket." No, Gladdy, I won't take off my jacket. It gets really repetitive. Most of the time it's funny. It's not like pull your hair out repetitive. It's no Dragon's Dogma. I don't know if anyone out there played Dragon's Dogma. Great game. Ambitious game, at the least. But man, that the NPC banter is just terrible. And it wasn't as bad in this game than it was there. So it's really only annoying once you put a lot of hours into it. So yeah, altogether sound was good. The occasional audio glitch was only slightly annoying, and the lame NPC voice work luckily is skippable, so you can just kind of boop boop. Flaws aside, loved the OST, and the sound design was meh. Alright, on to the story. The probably most important part of a Final Fantasy, or at least the most kind of, when you think about a Final Fantasy, you think about the story. So while the gameplay might be more in the forefront in 15 as in previous titles, this does not mean that the story is ineffective or shallow. It seems like the writers really wanted to create kind of a synthesis of, those classical Final Fantasy themes, tropes and concepts, both as like a celebration and as an introduction to the franchise for, newcomers. I think they pretty much pulled it off, honestly. I have to say they did pull it off, story-wise. It's not the best story in the series, but it's definitely the most gripping and charming since 9. I know. Pull out your pitchforks. Pull out your pitchforks and your torches. I thought 10 was okay. I haven't ranked the Final Fantasies yet, but this is definitely above 10 for me, and for 12. But yeah, I won't go into spoilers, but I will give you a overview and a short synopsis of the story if you out there are interested. The story centers around Noctis, the young prince of the kingdom of Lucius, which is the last remaining bastion of hope against the mechanical armies of the Niflheim Empire. Not Nibelheim, Niflheim. One day, Noctis is sent away at his father's request to marry his childhood friend and oracle of the gods, Lunafreya, who's kind of like a mix between Aerith and Celis. She's a badass. And Noctis is sent with his father's royal car, the regalia, and 3 friends. His advisor, Ignis, his bodyguard, Gladiolus, and his best friend, Prompto, who really does not much except take pictures and, hangs around. I like Prompto a lot. So while on his way to Lunafreya, the capital of Lucius, Insomnia, is attacked by the Niflheim Empire. And lots of shit goes down. I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say now Noctis is left locked out of his own kingdom, with only his legacy and his friendships to lead him to his destiny and to reclaim the throne. Stop the Empire and save Lucius from the strange demons who have been terrorizing the world in an ever-encroaching night. It's pretty awesome. Now that might seem like a pretty simple premise and plot, and that's because it is. Simple is not always bad, though. A lot of people say the story is convoluted or complicated or vague. But for me, that's as long as the substance is strong, I'm okay with more style than substance. If that substance is kind of distilled, then I don't really care. I like style. Who doesn't like style? Sometimes when there's more substance than style, I'd rather it be more substance than style anyway. Because if it's the other way around, it's like it's not fun if it's all substance, narrative wise. You know what I mean? Then it's just going to be a bunch of exposition. It leaves nothing to the imagination. But yeah, it's great. The story that unfolds through Noctis's travels is about as classical as really possible, but never in a derivative or like just a lazy cut and paste kind of way. It pulls, like most Final Fantasies, from classical Western mythology and thought encompassing the stories, such as coming of age, vengeance, redemption, sacrifice, the importance of the integration of order and chaos, destiny in the face of the transcendent, the two brothers, and all these classical archetypes and themes are there, and they're awesome. The themes are mostly well done, and I think honestly the game is paced pretty great, except for the end. It's weird at the end. We'll talk about that later. But honestly, mostly it's paced great. I know some people won't agree. I did. I enjoy it. It followed the Campbellian monomyth to a T. It's good that I enjoy the pacing so much, and that it followed kind of these human archetypes, because sometimes the characterization can be pretty vague and just kind of poor at times. It was never bad enough for me to kind of lose my interest at all, because I pretty much played like 8 to 10 hours a day. Right when the game came out, I was just like boom, 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 just pumping it out, dog. So obviously the characterization wasn't that bad because it kept me coming back. But I did notice it, and I can see how someone how that could really bother someone. But it was really good. I like the story a whole lot. The lore of the game is really cool too, and that's where kind of a problem kind of arises, because there is a problem with the presented lore of the game. Because unfortunately, some of the more important historical lore and some of the character pretense is just plain not included in the game. It was introduced separately in a CGI movie called Kingsglaive and a short anime series called Brotherhood. Allergies, excuse me. Kingsglaive is kind of a prequel. It shows the fall of Insomnia, focusing on the king and his team of royal knights, the Kingsglaive. It's a pretty cool movie. It's not the best movie, but it's a badass prequel, dog. You can see it before or after. Honestly, I'd say see it after in some ways, but also in some ways I'd say see it before. Either way, if you're gonna play 15, see Kingsglaive at some point. And then there was Brotherhood, which was that five-part series that kind of touches on every one of the 4 main characters and kind of their background and how they know each other. It's really good for that one. I do recommend you watching before you play the game, because it gives you really good insight into the character motivation. And Kingsglaive gives a lot of the good political machinations, for the background of the setting, which is good, but not essential. Like, none of the supplementary material is essential. Some people might say it is. I don't, but it's definitely worth a watch if you either plan on playing 15 or you have played it and haven't watched them. You should watch them because they're pretty awesome. The most controversial aspect of the story is the asymmetrical narrative that it completes to. It's really weird. I don't want to spoil anything, but at one point during the narrative, maybe like 2/3 in, it halts its open world structure of like the main quest, side quest, freedom kind of thing. Becomes much more traditionally linear. From what I've heard, a fair amount of people did not enjoy this choice, and that's understandable. It is striking, and the momentum that an open world narrative kind of has, it definitely bottlenecks to a degree of linearity that can be disorienting and unbalanced, and I can see how some people might not like it. I, on the other hand, thought this choice was freaking awesome. I loved it, and it was very bold, because I do enjoy the open world genre, but generally about 2/3 in, strangely enough, I get really bored with the same old gameplay loops. Just repeat, and you're done. It's just the same thing over and over and over. And I usually don't finish open world games. You know what I mean? I've only really finished a handful of open world games because it just gets boring. So with 15, it was pretty smart of them. Around the 2/3 mark, they just bottleneck that shit, put it into like it turns in, and it's not purely linear. You can go back to the open world part of the game at any point during the linear parts. So it's never exclusively linear. It's just narratively linear. Like you can escape from that narrative and kind of go back in time, so to speak, and like do some other side quest, and then come back to the linear, and then finish the game. It's a lot of options. And this game is full of narrative and gameplay options, which I never hear anyone talk about when they talk about this game. I think it's one of the better parts of the game. But yeah, the last third part of the narrative, the linear one, is freaking awesome. Even with the aforementioned lack of characterization and presented lore, man, I was there. I was there with the characters. It was great. The story ended up being a net positive for me in the long run. It was really good. So good. Bravissimo. Overall, it's a great story with good to poor characterization at times. Kind of strange narrative pacing and fantastic nostalgic bombs of thematic and conceptual awesomeness. If you like Final Fantasy stories, if you like classical stories, if you like stories that are open for interpretation, if you'll like it. If you like any of those things, you'll like it. I liked it a lot. I don't want to spoil anything. Me and the Cardinal are probably gonna do a spoiler talk here in a couple of days, so be ready for that. We're going to be talking all about this story and how awesome it is. All right, now on to gameplay. Woo boy, gameplay. Gameplay is definitely the most controversial element of Final Fantasy XV. There are some people who don't like the story. There are some people who do like the story. But it's definitely not as divided as the gameplay. Because, it's all open world, like purely open world, except for that last third. And all the combat is in real time, which, they've never done that in a main series Final Fantasy other than 12, and that was kind of a hybrid, so to speak. But yeah, I guess let's start with the controls. Controls are generally well implemented, even though they are confusing for some people. For instance, the Cardinal had a lot of issues. Had a lot of issues with some of the control schemes, which I'll talk about later. I get it because they did make a lot of weird choices when it came to the multiple control schemes, that they could have just overlapped some of the buttons and it would have kind of alleviated some of the confusion. But yeah, I had no problems adapting to the multiple control schemes. But one thing I can agree with is the camera. Woo boy. Okay, the camera is functional for sure. It's not freaking Durgis Sabaris. This isn't the worst camera. This is not even a bad camera. It's just at times it's not good. Like in hallways, it's terrible in hallways, or in like a heavily forested area. The camera is a bigger foe than any creature you could come across. It's frustrating at times. It can get trapped and like swing in those really awkward places and just stick, leaving you guessing what the fuck is going on. It's not a game killer because you can easily kind of escape out of those weird corners pretty fast. But it's definitely the game's weakest link. I think the game's weakest link is the camera for me. If they could patch anything, I would like for them to somehow patch the camera. That would be awesome. Also, picking up items and like mounting things and like activating things, it could be downright an infuriating task at times. There's something that happens when you mix the too long character animation with the questionable camera, and you get, oh my god, the thing that comes out of that is just terrible. Because I swear, sometimes it takes 5 or more attempts to just pick up a goddamn item off the ground. Now, the problem did eventually work its way out with time, but that's just because, 70 hours in, I was able to acclimate to the fucking shitty, terrible controls. And that's not an excuse, that's just a fact. I eventually acclimated it to it. But that's... it's so terrible sometimes, because you see an item on the ground, and you're just like, god damn it. Because you'll click it, you'll click the X to, pick up the item, and then you'll jump, and when you jump, you hit it again, but you're already in the air at the time. And you just end up jumping without picking the fucking item up. It's so annoying. It's my least favorite part of the game. It makes me yell. If I'm in a bad mood and I'm playing 15 and that happens, I'm just like, it's. But and then again, this in no way made the entirety of the game a net negative. It's just unfortunate. Now on to the actual gameplay of the game. I'm going to give you a quote of the director Tabata. I forgot his first name. According to him, the gameplay revolves around 3 elements: journey, companions, and car. Just singular car. Alright, for the journey element, we aimed to offer the user the feeling of an actual road trip. We spent time experimenting on how to convey a sense of travel, making the world as seamless as possible, and offering the player a panned-out vantage point. The most transformative element of the journey is the presence of your companions. Ensuring each of the characters feel real will help the player become emotionally involved with the party, and enabling them to share the joys and hardships that await the group on their travels. That's why we paid a lot of attention to details, such as small habits and behaviors, all the way down to the sense of distance maintained by each character in their relationships with Noctis. This kind of development doesn't happen in leaps and bounds, needing a lot of time and effort in AI and animation, but I think it's shaping up into something we can be proud of, and it's a lot of fun to hang out with Noctis in the game. It really is. The car has its roots in our core theme, parent and child. Noctis and his companions are traveling in King Regis's car. The car connects the son and his father. It's both pivotal to the story experience and a means of travel. It can also be customized as a game mechanic. And honestly, I'm pretty sure Tabata and crew pulled all of that off, with a couple of snags, of course. Let's start with the element of the journey. Now, it feels like this, Final Fantasy XV, is what Japanese open-world games like Metal Gear Solid 5 and Dragon's Dogma were striving for, but failed at terribly. For me, the exploration was very well. It was promoted well to me. It was varied enough that I constantly would want to explore, and I was constantly being rewarded for exploring, which is a huge. It's a very important thing for an open world game to reward you for exploring, because that's the whole point of having an open world game. For example, the only way to digest or apply your XP is to rest at a camp or a hotel. You can rest at a tent at a campsite, which allows you to cook and gain temporary stat bonuses, or at a hotel, which will net you an XP digest bonus, but no food. With the ability to level attached to geographical movement, matched with the fact that the game will always have you moving from place to place, it felt really natural for me to go on this road trip, It felt like the gameplay and the progression, it was like the character progression, the world progression, and the narrative progression were all integrated into this road trip mechanic. And for me, I was immediately hooked. And I still am. I freaking love going on a road trip with my homies. As for the negative of exploration, I do wish there was a wait function. It's an open world game with a day-night cycle. give us a wait function, man. What? Come on. I wish that was there. It would help some of the side quest fatigue, especially in some of the later post game. Yeah, some of that side quest fatigue can get kind of annoying. And I can't forget to mention the absence of swimming, which is it's understandable, and it's not really that important, honestly. Like it's cool that you can swim in most open world games, but why? Why? Like what's so great about swimming? Like you're able to go from one point to the other, or you can like dive down and like get items under the water, and that usually incorporates a terrible camera angle, and you can't see anything anyway. So I'm okay with there not being swimming. If anything, if there was swimming, it would have been just not worth the effort on their part. I get it. And there was an unfortunate amount of Mario walls in this game. I'm not sure if anyone out there knows the term Mario walls, but basically it was invented by Mario, of course. In for instance, Mario 1, where you go forward right, or that way right, and then you can't go back because there's an invisible wall there. That's a Mario wall. Just in the strangest of places. It pissed me off at times. Like some of the Mario walls are just nonsensical. Which I'm sure they did it for their own reasons, for like design reasons and landmass. I get it. There has to be some, but they happen way too often. They always hinder a nice game flow. Like I'm always just like explore. Mario wall, and I have to go all the way around. It's terrible. There's also some weird Mario walls while you're in your airship that piss me off, but the airship in general is so good. Oh my god. So yeah, back to the road trip motif. Definitely a strange choice at first glance, right? Even I, when the first bit of 15 started coming out, and they seem to be focusing on road trips. I'm like, why am I road tripping with these dudes? This is weird. This is not a Final Fantasy game. Why is there a car road trip in my Final Fantasy game? This is dumb. But then, about 50 hours in, actually, it clicked. It made perfect sense. What was classical Final Fantasy all about? Like Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3. 4 dudes taking a road trip, sans road, of course. They sleep in tents, all for saving a kingdom with the help of magical crystals. No spoilers, but that is literally the plot of Final Fantasy XV. Yeah, I realized that about 50 hours in, and I have just been giggling about it ever since, because it just makes me so happy that they somehow subversively put in the core of Final Fantasy into this seemingly anachronistic kind of gameplay aesthetic. Like you're on a road trip, and like, at first you're like, that's dumb. There's nothing like Final Fantasy, and then you play it, and you're like, holy shit, this is Final Fantasy. Like at its core, this is Final Fantasy. But yeah, the whole of the road trip gameplay is really great and worked out better and funner than I honestly ever could have imagined it would have been. Driving the regalia around with my bros, listening to like Final Fantasy VI music, enjoying the gorgeous vistas. The vistas are gorgeous when you're driving around. It's really great, and honestly, even 100+ hours in, I still sometimes refuse to fast travel and just enjoy the ride. Of course, sometimes I do that because the load times can just be terrible sometimes. Speaking of fast travel. They give you a good amount of options to do so. You can fast travel in your car, or you can fast travel to your car and to your last rest stop from any location, except dungeons where you can fast travel to the entrance of the dungeon. From your car, you can fast travel to any location that you've visited before. And it sounds complicated and limited, but it's fine. Honestly, I didn't have a problem with any of the fast travel systems, apart from some of the loading is atrocious. Yeah, it's nice to fast travel from a defeated monster hunt to your car, and then fast travel to the tipster to receive your reward. It's nice. It's maybe has a few extra steps than maybe needed, but I think it works fine. And along with the monster hunts, as I just mentioned, which honestly end up feeling a lot like the titular Capcom series, Monster Hunter, which in all the best ways. There are a good amount of side quests to kind of dawdle in too, apart from the main quest, of course. You have like your basic fetch quests. You have a quest where you search for a certain item that's hidden in a certain area. That they give you the area, then you search for it. There are quests where they just give you a place to explore, and then you find a marker. There's ones where you find items in the wild with no marker at all. No, honestly, these are just slight variations of just the fetch quest, but they're varied enough for me to not really just get stale and boring with it. I mean, what can you really do? What can you really do with friggin' side quests? Honestly, tell me. I mean, Witcher 3 did it best. Much better than 15. The side quests in that game were awesome. But 15, they're not bad. They're not bad side quests. And honestly, I rarely finish open world games at all these days, so I get if you don't like it. It's definitely better than Far Cry when it comes to its side quest content. So, I mean, I'm sure people out there like Far Cry. I don't have anything against Far Cry, but one thing I do remember about Far Cry is that the side quests are terribly boring and repetitive. And while some of these quests might be considered repetitive, I didn't feel like they were repetitive. And if they did get repetitive, it's because I'd been playing for like 10 hours, and I'm like, okay, I should honestly look at something else, because my eyes feel like they're going to start bleeding. Honestly, a negative of the side quests really go into the user interface. I wish there was an easier way to cycle through the quests and all the quest givers. They really dropped the ball, because it's just kind of annoying, especially in having to go with the monster quest, the monster hunts, like having to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and get kind of annoying. But none of it really impeded my collective enjoyment. I enjoyed it as a whole, even though it had its problems. Now, the combat. Boom! Combat is now real-time, of course, rather than the classical turn-based combat of the Final Fantasies of yore. Now, I did play the demos that Square-Enix released prior to 15. What was it? Episode Duske and Platinum Demo? Yeah, Platinum Demo. And honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of their combat. I could it was okay, but I just couldn't really get into the combat. I didn't think it was that great. Kind of like Ground Zeroes, Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes. I could not get into the controls. I couldn't get into the gameplay. But when the full game released, there was something about the gameplay and the controls that just clicked like instantly. It's just like, boom! I started 15. I'm like, they fixed it. I immediately recognized the fact that they fixed something from the Platinum Demo to the final release in terms of controls and how the combat controls. So yeah, they did something to make it really great. You control only Noctis in battle, only one person. And I know it's kind of lame. I know you're like, what, a Final Fantasy game where you control one person? What is this, Final Fantasy XIII? No, it isn't. No, it's not boring at all. The best way I can describe it is it seems like Square Enix finally found a way to bring those like super fucking badass, intense anime style fight scenes from Advent Children. They finally found a way to take that and make it actually playable, like as an actual game, and it's freaking sweet, so good. The battle system is gorgeous. You'll never really hold down that circle button like in old Final Fantasies. You hold down the circle button to just kind of grind. You're just like, it's fucking boring. You'll never do that. You will die. Even I'm level 75. If I come across a group of like level 30 bad guys, if I don't pay attention, I'll get my ass kicked. Like there's, it's kind of weird. It's almost I don't know. It's you have to pay attention in the combat system. I really enjoyed it. I still really enjoy it. It's definitely my favorite part of the game. I think is the combat. Yeah, I'd say the combat is my favorite part of the game. Yeah, so Noctis has the power of his royal ancestors, and he can like warp around and phase out of freaking space to like dodge attacks, and he can summon weapons. He can summon the weapons of his dead ancestors to fight with. It sounds just as cool as it is. You can pause at any moment to use an item on anyone, given you have sufficient stamina. The item effects I kind of overhauled. They're a little different, and they work perfectly for this system. As in, like, there's no more like potions. You know, heal 100, high potions heal 500. Elixirs and high elixirs are super rare. Never use them. It's not like that anymore. Now it's like potions heal half your health. High potions heal all your health. Elixirs, elixirs heal your max HP half. High elixirs heal all your max HP to the max. So it's a little switched around, but it works really well with the system. But yeah, the default battle system is active, but you can select like a wait system, where basically like if Noctis doesn't move for like a couple of seconds, it'll pause and give you ample time to kind of create deeper strategies than just zoom slash. I didn't play on this mode. Cardinal did, and he said it was really awesome, and he enjoyed its kind of strategic flexibility that it gave you. There are no limit breaks, but Noctis does have kind of a limit break-ish ability. You know, it pretty much works the same thing, and it's awesome. You can evolve it and level it up and stuff. The equipment system left me wanting a whole lot more, though. There's no chest, there's no chest, helmet, arms, etc. There's only outfits, and there are only a few, and it kind of stinks. It's kind of cool, but the lack of variety sucks. Like every outfit gives you different stat boosts or different abilities, but there's just not a lot of them. There's not enough of them. There are also still accessories, which work like accessories do. They give you either stat boosts or bonuses and stuff. The magic system is entirely overhauled. MP is still in the game, but only Noctis has it, and he only uses it for warping and phasing, which is great for like maneuvering and combat and stuff. The magic system itself. Think about the draw system from Final Fantasy VIII mixed with the fusion system from Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII. It's pretty much that. You gather fire, ice, and thunder in the wild, and then you mix them with items and ingredients to create spells with varying effects and powers and stuff like that. It's awesome. It's refreshing. I enjoyed it. I just wish there was more options. There's a good degree of options, but I don't know. It felt just kind of I don't know. It wasn't deep enough. I think that's what my main problem with the magic system. But it was cool and interesting, and it kind of fixed what the problems that the draw system had. Thank God. It's like they finally fixed Final Fantasy VIII's draw system in another game. On to summons. Now, what would a Final Fantasy game be without summons? Here I'm rather torn. On one hand, these summons are hands down the most incredible, jaw-dropping summoning experiences I've ever had in a Final Fantasy game. You summon these creatures like Rama, I don't know, the lightning old dude. And he's like 100 stories tall, and he picks you up, and oh my god, it's so cool. But on the other hand, the summon mechanics are some of the lamest and most disappointing mechanics in the entire game. Basically, you can't select your summons. Instead, they're reliant on certain combat scenarios to become active. For example, one summon can only be summoned if all of your comrades are KO'd. So, like, if those conditions are met, like a button prompt appears, you hold down L2, and then you summon them, and you reap their godly powers. It's fucking badass, but, I'm able to summon enough. Like, I feel like I'm able to summon a lot. But, and the mechanic may be lore relevant, because it makes sense in lore and in the world of the game that this is how it would work, but it's not engaging, and you're just not attached to the summons like you are in the older Final Fantasies. It's more like the summons just kind of come and help you out. They're just like, oh, here you go, later. So I get why they did that, and it's cool, but I miss being able to just be like, summon, bleep, summon, bleep, But my god, they're amazing looking. Along with leveling up your stats using XP and resting, the other element of growth is done through the Ascension Grid. The Ascension Grid is awesome. It's a welcome change from the unfocused Sphere Grid, License Board, and Crystarium from 10-12-13. Because those things were so unfocused. Like, you just kind of selected random things and they just did stuff. And I don't know, but by the end, everyone is the same, And while the Ascension Grid, I guess, technically does the same thing in theory, the way it does it, what it presents, and how it's organized really works well with how different this game is. It's kind of more akin to Skyrim, where each of the grid points are split into multiple categories, like combat, magic, exploration, teamwork, techniques. There's a few more I can't remember. And a lot of the things that you buy on the grid affect not only Noctis but the whole team. So you're kind of like expanding the growth of your entire crew, which is nice. It fixes a lot of those problems that I had with 10 through 13's kind of bullshit leveling system that they had. Very good. I never. It was always relevant. I never felt like I was wasting Ascension points. Like, even if I bought something and I was like, man, I should have saved my points for that. I was like, well, this is still cool though. Ding. So altogether, the gameplay, while flawed, it's really, really ambitious and much deeper than I thought it was going to be. I never got sick of just jumping from gameplay loop to gameplay loop, and I was always having options to do stuff. And I was never running out of things to discover, and never running out of things to just be like, oh my god, at. Especially like the post game content I'm still doing the post game content, is really good. It's been so long since I've played a game with so much post game content. It's pretty awesome. I'm trying not to gush too much about this game, but fuck it, right? It's amazing. It's so good. I can't say the gameplay is for everyone, though. I really can't. And I can't say that the gameplay is perfect. But I can say that I enjoyed the total package, regardless of, aforementioned annoyances, which they are very annoying. The camera is terrible. The summons are disappointing. But I mean, I'm 100 plus hours in, and I'm still going. And Square-Enix is going to support this game. Like, all next year, they're going to give free updates, and then they have that like 6-piece season pass full of new content and story stuff. And I'm very excited about the future of Final Fantasy XV and the future of Final Fantasy in general. So can I recommend this game to longtime Final Fantasy fans? Yes, especially if you felt like 13 was kind of a misstep. I didn't hate 13, but it definitely felt like a misstep. It felt like a step in the wrong direction for the series. Would I recommend this game to newcomers? Yes. Yeah, yes. This might be right next to 7 in terms of, like, you know, if someone came up to me like, hey, I'm thinking of getting a Final Fantasy, which one should I play? It would either be 7 or 15, honestly. Just because it's refreshingly modern in all the right ways, while just being unmistakably classic Final Fantasy at times. It's really great. For me, the game did what a game should. It was fun. It is fun. I'm still playing it. Like 84% done with the trophies. I've never 100%ed a game. Like, I've never 100%ed trophies. I mean, I've 100%ed games before, but never on my, never on my PS4. And I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it for 15, dog. But yeah, yes, playing through 15 made me so excited about the Final Fantasy VII remake. If Square-Enix is back, Final Fantasy is back, and that's all I have to say about that. If anyone out there has any, if anyone out there has played it and they have some, opinions that they want to share with me, please go to the link area where you put in comments and then press enter, and then I can read the comments and then enter a comment back, and then we could have an exchange. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'm tired. That was a long review. Thanks for watching, everyone out there in internet camera behind the camera land. Later, guys.
What is your